Welcome to the Global Business Women's Pod, brought to you by the Greater Houston Women's Chamber of Commerce. I am Susan Dyson and proud to be the CEO, President, and founder of the Chamber. Please join us for this empowering podcast every Thursday at 6 p.m.
Good day. My name is Sofia. Honored to be here. Practicing law for 30 years. Immigrant, came here initially. My dad with a $5,400 grant. A tremendous amount of life in the interim. As I introduce a fellow Rice Owl, I will just say in synopsis, congratulations for being here. The face of power does not change if we don't stay in the game. And you're in the game and you're here. I've got 3 children. The balance, it's a balance in quotation. You do outsource your non-core functions. Always remember, 25 years ago, I led Girls Inc. of Greater Houston. Always stay in everything you do, strong, smart, and bold. I am ecstatic to introduce Lise Rodionov. And if I got it wrong, it's completely my fault because she worked hard to give me how to say it. This woman, and I will say this with an inordinate amount of pride, fellow Rice graduate, spent 28 years at an energy technology company, SLB, the world's largest global energy technology company, in a variety of roles. And she humbly notes she spent 1/3 of her time managing operations, 1/3 in human resources, and 1/3 doing other stuff. Okay, let me say as follows. For us mere mortals, what that really means, a little bit of IT, a little bit of finance, a little bit of sales, but in her last 2 roles, she was president of North America and global director of sustainability. Throughout her 28 year with the company, she relocated 8 times. I know you didn't put this in your bio. I put it back in. I'm sorry I did not adhere to all the rules because I think that says a lot about her trajectory and her success. She went from Houston, she was in Anchorage, Scotland, Venezuela, and Trinidad. After retiring in 2022, not surprisingly, sought after as a board member, currently at TD Williamson, a privately held technology company in the midstream space. As I noted, Rice, bachelor's in management and an MBA. She's married to Peter, and as she appropriately knows, she has 2 awesome kids. I am honored, elated, and delighted to introduce Lise.
I'm going to make you move.
I'm going to make
You see, I'm also very long. Because your mic is on this side. So
okay,
that way
perfect.
we can look at each other when we talk.
That's very close, okay. I can give her some space. I
Hello.
learned in the United States about personal space. I didn't have it in Argentina.
Is my mic on? Good. So yeah, the pressure's on. Thank you for that introduction.
Okay, let's say as follows. First of all, why are we here? Why are we having this discussion?
It's a good place to start, probably. So I guess I would maybe paint. There we go. Can you hear me now? I don't work for Verizon. That's not something. No, so if I paint like 2 scenarios, let's say at work, one where you come to work and you feel connected to a bigger picture, you know how what you're working on matters, the impact it has, versus a scenario where you come and you're bored, you're lost, you spend your whole day there doing lots of stuff, but you're not sure how it matters and how it contributes. Obviously, that first scenario is one where, your mental and physical well-being is better. It's better for the company. There's plenty of data that supports that motivation's higher, engagement, productivity, retention, pride, loyalty, all those things. So, that first scenario, while having purpose and feeling connected to a sense of purpose is not the only thing that contributes to it. For me, I think it's a big one. So I also think, why we're here is that while a large percentage, and it varies by study, but let's say 80 to 90% of senior executives feel connected to a sense of purpose at work, only 15% or so of frontline employees and frontline supervisors feel that same connection. So it's a great scenario to be in, but it's one that it's not that they don't have personal purpose, it's that they don't feel connected, let's say, to a purpose at work. So
I appreciate that. Can you still hear me? I'm obviously a little technologically challenged. And I appreciate you saying that this is a Woman in Tech event. How do you think some of our colleagues here can build a purpose, but at the same time, being cognizant that you've got to leverage your technical skills?
Yeah, so I guess my first I have two initial reactions. One is that I don't think it's different, for if you have technical skills versus legal skills, or you're a musician or a sports figure, whatever it is. I think it's the same, and I do think the order is important. You build the purpose, and then you figure out how to leverage your skills. You don't build a purpose based on what you know or what you're good at. A good purpose is one that is based, similar, Sarah touched on it in the keynote, but it's something, that speaks to your values, that you care passionately about, your core beliefs. It is externally focused rather than internally focused. And that's harder to do earlier in your career. The tendency is, I think, to look more inside. And I would say it's also more focused on impact rather than execution. So what impact am I going to have externally on something that I care passionately about? So that's whether that's for an individual purpose or an organization purpose. That's kind of how you would build one. There was a blog that I followed, and there was an article in it around finding your purpose that I think also probably helps answer the question a little bit. So this, in the article, they talked about that you could put purpose in 3 buckets. One of them being the explorer, one of them being the journeyman or journeywoman, and the other one being the healer. So the explorer is someone who is passionate about innovating and pushing the boundaries and potentially impacting, let's say, hundreds of millions of people, but people you don't know. You're driving change. The journeyman or the journeywoman is someone who's passionate about teaching, sharing knowledge. So I would say a more personal connection maybe than the explorer, but still a very large, maybe hundreds of thousands of people that you're impacting with this purpose. And then the healer is someone who's passionate about leading and managing and having, really seeing the impact at a more deeply personal level. So none of them are wrong. Finding your purpose is about figuring out which one of those or multiple ones of those you want to put your time and energy in.
No, I appreciate that. As I'm listening to all this, and I'm putting myself in their shoes for a moment. You've had a tremendous amount of success. And I think I would want to hear a little bit more granularity. For instance, me at 40, one of the decisions I made is I never got a chance to do anything. I came to Boston first and I wanted to do something at Harvard. So I did a 3-year program, but I had 3 children at the age of 11 and all of that around it. Law is not very different from the statistics up there. The wellness issue, the inability, success, obviously not easy to find and to perpetuate. So to me, in our dialogue, in anticipation of this, you did a beautiful thing about talking about the risks versus the challenges, and it's all about the perspective. So perhaps give us a little bit, the euphemism would be the granularity. The sausage making is what it really, I want to hear a little sausage making. And the granularity is the PC version of that word. I mean, you've done incredibly well. What have been some of the challenges or risks?
With working towards purpose specifically? Absolutely. Yeah. So there's 3 that come to mind. One of them is it's exhausting. So like figuring out what you're passionate about, what you care about, your core values, and then articulating like what impact you're going to have. Like that's not deciding what you're going to have for lunch tomorrow. So like I think it's a mentally exhausting endeavor to do. It's one worth doing. Again, think back to that first scenario, but it's not an easy task to do. As well as just even once you've found it, I think the pursuit of purpose can also be exhausting if you've chosen a good one as an organization or as an individual. I think another challenge is that the return on your investment in time, to get to that scenario 1 is longer term and maybe less clear, especially if you're sitting in, that explorer bucket or the journeyman, you're impacting tons. Like you may not even see the impact of some of your activities. So whereas if you're going to try to learn a new skill or learn, get that job or get that raise, those are much shorter term, hopefully shorter term, clearer returns on investment. So making sure you're carving out time and working towards purpose on something that has a longer term, less clear ROI is for sure a challenge. It takes some discipline. I think a third one, which is probably one is easiest to underestimate. Certainly for me, that was the case. But is the fact that, and there's a quote that actually I think articulates it that I'll maybe share first. It's when you shift the way you look at things, the things you look at change. So if you now have this profound, passionate sense of purpose around something, there will be things in your life that there are people that are close to you, the job that you're in, the company that you work for, that don't align with your newfound sense of purpose. And figuring out, so you might lose those things, and figuring out which ones, based on your priorities and your purpose, you're willing to lose is tough to do. And, challenges are again, they take energy to do. And I would say it doesn't mean that you have to lose all of them, but working off purpose is uncomfortable. It is, again, Sarah was describing a little bit how she felt when she was clearly working off purpose at one point. It's not fun to do that. So if you keep too many of those things close to you, you will be uncomfortable. And so the things you do keep close to you, whether that's people or a job or the company, figure out ways to, just like any risk or challenge, you manage and mitigate that risk, I would say. But I will say, if you've chosen something that you care passionately about, those choices become easier to make, though it's less, I think you feel less conflicted about them. And certainly, again, earlier in your career, as I said, I think purpose is more focused a little internally, and as you shift to be more external, I think that also becomes easier to do. I will also, if I can add one more thought, is I do think, because I have, awesome adult children, I think that millennials and Gen Z are better at prioritizing purpose and being not just uncomfortable, but unwilling to work off purpose. So again, thinking from the organization perspective, like if you're not willing to appreciate that, that will hurt your ability to engage your workforce.
You've said so much. I just took some notes and I'm trying to do a little synopsis and then focus on that lens that we need to visit about. You talked about managing and mitigating, and I would say sometimes it's just navigating. I call it the grit and the grind. Sometimes it's just survival. And then you get lucky with that, I call it the gravitas moment, and that's when the purpose shines. And there's gratitude for that. We spoke a little bit before about this lens, this purpose. And how then, and perhaps some are at a certain level, some are just at the beginning. How do you then get others within your team, perhaps they're just your colleagues, or if you're leading a team, to share in that purpose, that similar lens?
Yeah, I appreciate that. Before I answer, though, I'm going to react to something that you said. I don't think that you should be surviving. In the end, I think that's the whole point, is if you feel like you are just surviving, then you aren't taking care of yourself, and it's the, hey, wait a minute, I need to reevaluate.
I think sometimes it's just life.
Okay.
I don't know what to say.
But
There are moments that I feel like I'm thriving, and there are moments I'm just surviving.
No,
I'm a mere mortal, sorry.
No. Life is, shit happens, and there's another quote. I like quotes. Dawn Staley, it messed up my bracket for the NCAA women's tournament, but I do like one of her quotes, and she's like, because life is always crappy. Things will happen, and it's not that it gets better. You just handle hard better. And
I believe his happiness is something you desire daily.
Exactly. Yes. So how can a manager, taking kind of the organizational view or managing a team view, how can you leverage purpose? I really do appreciate the question, because thank you for my bio. If I segue just briefly, I've managed businesses very successfully. Every business I ran, I improved the profitability of, and even through cycles, my team engagement, my organization engagement was higher than the, in the top of the company. And it's something I'm very proud of. And if you ask me why or how I was able to do that, there's two things that I would point to. One of them is I care passionately about people and about winning equally, but I care about both. And I think that's one of them. And the second is, I am a non-technical person. Thank you for allowing me to be here at a Women in Tech event. It grew up in a highly technical industry and in a highly technical company. And one advantage I had versus my peers and competitors inside the company and outside the company is I appreciated the power of connecting hearts and minds, and that the why and purpose is a way to engage your organization in a competitive advantage way. And so it was something I recognized very early. And so, how can a manager do that? What are some of the things you can do? There's a ton of them, and maybe if we have time for Q&A, we can go into more. But the two that I would say, one of them is have a purpose, an organizational purpose that's good, that speaks to an impact that is external and that matters to the people you're talking to. If you talk about something that's going to make their life better, they will care about it. And you don't just do your purpose exercise and you say, okay, here's our purpose and let's put it on a card or whatever. Every time I talked about my strategy, I remind, we're going to do X, Y, and Z because we care about this. When you're going to roll out something that's going to be uncomfortable, transformation, a big change, remind, but it's because, we're trying to get to here, that scenario that I described. So use purpose as a way to constantly engage hearts and minds is something that a leader can do. And I think especially in high-paced technical organizations, you go straight to execution too often and you don't spend time on why. Spending time on why is absolutely worth the investment in time. The second thing I think that a leader can do is a little more tactical, but it's, as I said to one of the earlier questions, individual purpose matters. Not just to millennials and to Gen Z, but individual purpose is more important than the company's purpose. Full stop, period. You can agree with that or disagree with that, but that is the reality. So, yes. So if you don't appreciate that, then you will struggle. You will be asking them to make compromise, and you will be asking them to choose and feel conflicted. That 15% I mentioned at the beginning of people not being connected to a sense of purpose at work is not that they don't have their own purpose. It's that they don't feel connected to that sense of purpose at work. So as a manager, figuring out how you remember I mentioned that working off purpose is painful. How can you connect their personal purpose to the company purpose? How can you incorporate things in their day-to-day tasks, so they don't feel like they have to leave that job to be working on purpose? So those two things is start with purpose, end with purpose, like talk about it a lot and make it a good one, and then help the individual connect their individual purpose to that company purpose. And so then they can feel every day they're in that scenario one that they're contributing.
I'm smiling, thinking it's no longer location. It's purpose. And it's and we're going to go periodically. It's a moment of painfulness and a moment of power. And I can never say in front of her that I'm just surviving. So Susan, as I thank you, I will text you, I'm surviving, but I will text her, I'm thriving. And Pearl and Julie, I'll tell you guys, and Maria, it's a moment by moment decision. Sometimes thriving.
No. So I have to interrupt again. I want you to tell me that you're surviving because no, because it gives me a chance to support you.
Okay, it's all good. Okay, that was clearly not in the next question. We're going back to script. Okay, we've heard beautifully talk about you need this purpose to convince of hearts and minds. Sometimes it can be painful. It's clearly powerful. It worked well for you. So, query, can you describe your own purpose? And over the 28 plus year inordinately successful career, did you have to pivot? I'm doing well with these keys.
Yeah, she warned me when we were prepping that she was going to make me talk about myself. So I appreciate that you waited this long to do it, so thank you. So yes, my purpose at work definitely changed throughout my career. Honestly, it would be weird if it didn't. Like, what I cared about, the impact that I wanted to have when I was 20 was different than 30 and 40, now I'm in my 50s. In the interest of time, I'm going to put it in, let's say, 3 buckets. So my first purpose, if you will, professionally, is I wanted to make enough money that I could buy whatever I want without having to worry. So that's not external. It's not about impact. It's execution. It's not a good one, but that was my purpose. I grew up poor. We grew our food. We raised our food. My mom made my clothes. I wanted to make money. After I started working, and went through a couple downturns, I started in HR, and so I was an influencer. I was not the decision maker, and I started to be frustrated with how the company, and this is nothing against SLB. I spent 28 years there. I love SLB. But I was frustrated with how we were managing downturns and the cycles and the ups as well, and not being able to do anything about it in a way because I'm just, this HR person. So my purpose, I would say, became more about how can I help the company manage the cycles better, be more resilient, so the workforce is impacted in a more positive way or a less negative way, but the company too, like the profitability on the up and the down just gets sucked as well. So they're not fun. So how can I do that? And so it became about achieving a role and a place and an influence in the company that allowed me to make those changes that were impacting lots of people and the company as well. And then I would say for the better part of my career, there were variations of it, but I was very keen on that. And then, the last role I had in the company, as you said, I was the head of sustainability. And so I was the first one in the role. I went into the job in 2019. And so this is when SLB is trying to decide what impact can we have? What are the customers going to do? What do we want to do? How are we going to talk about it? And setting that strategy. And so as I went through that, I had a lot of conversation outside the company, outside the industry. And I sensed, similar to that frustration I felt personally in moving to that second purpose, I felt this frustration with, in particular, many senior leaders and the customers that I talked to, of navigating that space and just doing things and being misunderstood, and things they thought would land well landed poorly, and vice versa. And just, I felt like, man, I can influence this because I have a high EQ. I have credibility. Investors and NGOs love talking to me because I was the president of North America. I have execution credibility, but I also now spoke this other language, so I could speak in words that resonated with them. And so my purpose, I would say, shifted to be more about how can I help the industry, be more, have some success commercially and strategically in that space.
Incredible journey, and obviously, just digesting. I actually think the opportunity to be in HR is inordinately empowering. You know everyone, you've got a sense of the resumes and what works and doesn't work, and then you shift to other empowering opportunities. So truly an amazing journey. I have to confess, did a lot of due diligence when I knew I was going to interview her. And I don't even think she wants me to ask this, but one of my favorite. She really wanted to engage the whole audience, but we don't have that much time. So in preparing for this and reading about her and her interviews, some of the words of wisdom you received from your parents, I thought were particularly fabulous. So if you'll indulge me, if you wish to go there, and then it's your show. Close it out as you deem appropriate.
Okay, so I will. The interview I think she's referring to when it's funny because the influential women in energy is something it sounds like a number of us have done. So in 2019, the interview that I did on that one is one I did talk about my family a lot, but I benefited. I had 2 parents with very high EQ. My mom was a career educator and my dad was a career HR person. So I would say the 2 nuggets I got from them, my mom was to treat relationships like a bank account. You have to put stuff in to be able to challenge and take stuff out. Those are withdrawals, those are deposits. And if you get into overdraft, there are fines to pay. You don't just get back to zero. From my dad, it was to always have a goal. And if you don't, you're a hitchhiker in your own life. If you have a goal, you're driving the car. You can always change your destination, but you're driving the car. So those are 2 nuggets.
Incredible. And you have a minute. I am smart enough to know that you've been president of this company and I have not, of SLB. So parting thoughts on
Yes.
purpose.
Thank you for the opportunity to close. So I guess I would just say, maybe to reiterate a couple of, I think, the key points. Have a purpose that is external, something that you're passionate about, linked to your core values, and that it's focused on impact, not on like execution and achieving steps. That individual purpose is more important than organizational purpose. Recognize that, but it's in everybody's best interest, the individual, so that you're in that scenario 1, and the company, so that you have a team that is highly productive and engaged. Figure out how to make that connection of the individual purpose with the organization's purpose, and that both the individual and the company have ownership for making that happen.
Thank you so much.
Okay.
Honored to be here.
Thank you, both of you. I love this quote too. There's the 2 most important days in your life: the day you were born and the day you find out why.
Oh,
Mic drop. Did I do it?